So that was my first few slides, just to set the scene and what's going on about this Cloud OS and whatever. And I'm just going to jump in for the next hour. Now I haven't timed this yet, but for roughly an hour, and talk to some more of the bells and whistles. Hopefully setting the scene for a few of my colleagues in the room, so that you're going to stay for their sessions. Okay, so I'm just these are little sweeteners, if you like, and a few of these I'm going to call out. No one else is showing them at all, so pay attention. You know, I'm not going to tell you which ones are which. No, I might do. So this is a slide deck that actually me and John worked on a while ago. It was about transforming your data center. So Windows Server obviously is the underpinning piece for all this, but System Center does help. Okay, System Center is not part of these 2 days, apart from tomorrow afternoon when we talk about what we announced and what we're saying at our MMS event, Microsoft Management Summit. So the System Center is not in the first day and a half, but the Windows Server piece is. And then rather than use those fluffy buckets around, beyond virtualization and every app, any cloud, they're more or less the same things, to be honest, but we've just changed the words. Maintaining availability. How do you manage and maintain availability of a single server, of a cluster? How do you keep your applications up and running? That's what that one talks to. How do you deploy applications and services? How do you get apps out there nice? How do you scale your infrastructure? Bigger and bigger and bigger, more and more virtualization potentially pops in there. And then delivering services is kind of the consumerization of IT. So I'm going to whiz through with a few little demos to throw in how all this works, okay? And you can read as well as I can, but I'll have a go. So just for some of it, okay? So almost these are the big high-level marketing-y buckets, words, and over on the left-hand side is calling out some bits and bobs that are useful, okay? So the idea here, though, is it a single server, a multi-node cluster, or a multi-site environment? We need to be able to keep your servers up and running. So if you're a single server all by itself, I need to start mitigating the risk of failure on a single server. So things like if a network card goes wrong, not to worry, if I have more than one, I'll fail over onto another one. And we do that with NIC teaming. Okay, so for network interface card teaming, you've been able to do it on Windows for a good long while, but it was always a third-party solution, and it was always supported by the third party. NIC teaming is now in the box, and I'll call that in a minute. The ability to move virtual machines around and all this clever stuff without a hard requirement on a storage area network or on a particular storage vendor. That's all gone. Transparent failover of clusters. So now I move into the clustering environment and a server dies. How do I fail the workload over? How do I fail the workload over without any impact to the user or the application? We do all that too. How do I put some resilience into storage? So I can do some really clever stuff with storage, and we'll do storage after coffee. But have the ability to specify a whole disk in that server is there as a hot standby. So if something pear-shaped goes wrong with storage of a hot standby, I can plug in and off I'll go. So the ability to keep, from a real noddy low-level stuff, a network card fails, a disk fails, I can keep a server up and running. And I can do cleverer things and throttle who can use what, and keep applications running nicely. But as far as a server is concerned, I have this ability to do this. And when we get into multi-site, I can do that too. We'll talk to it later on, but if a whole site went down, not to worry, I have a copy of that site somewhere else, and I can just bring it up, bring the whole environment up, okay, which is kind of nice. Lots on storage. I'm not going to steal too much of Aidan's message here on storage, but the ability to have continuously available storage that you can use for things like SQL Server or Hyper-V or anything that's continually available. Currently on a failover cluster, you have some storage and a couple of nodes, up to 64 nodes now on our platform. But if a server died, there was always a time lag for the resource to fail over. It's gone. It's gone. We can back up I/O. You can keep working away at it nicely, and when the server comes back up, it flushes itself and carries on working. So as far as a user or an application is concerned, there was zero downtime, zero. Okay. And I mentioned the fact that we need to automate everything. Everything is completely automatable. That's a good word for lights out stuff. So the ability to I'll give it a call out now. PowerShell itself has become massive. If you don't know PowerShell, I don't. If you don't know PowerShell, you need to learn PowerShell. You really need to learn PowerShell. I need to learn PowerShell. Okay. Everything we do, with about one or two exceptions in the UI, all it does is run PowerShell under the hood, and you get to see what the PowerShell is, and you go and snick, copy and paste, and go use that later. So you do something once in the UI, see what the PowerShell was, copy and paste that, and then go write a script that uses that line. So rather than adding 1,000 users, click, 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 add one, see what a script was, and then do for I in 1 to 1,000 do, and it'll do it 1,000 times. That kind of that concept. Everything's remotable. You shouldn't need to log on to a box to do stuff. You just shouldn't. Maybe when you're configuring it and getting it working, you might want to, don't have to. But everything's remotable is the point, okay? So as far as this is concerned, I'm going to call out a few, okay? Who's heard of server core? I know there's more of you than that, but server core we announced in 2008, back in 2008, I assume. And basically what server core was, we get a full-blown Windows server, and we take out all the stuff that you don't need, and pun is intended now, to run core server workloads. Who needs Internet Explorer on a server? Who needs Windows Explorer on a server? Okay, that's the concept. So rather than having a box that's got a footprint of that, you have a box that's got a footprint of that. So in theory, it runs more performant. There's a smaller attack surface. There's a less requirement to patch, therefore less requirement to reboot, and all that stuff. It was good. It's a brilliant idea. Did anyone deploy server core? See, no one. Oh, one. Okay, one. And you can't count, Kevin. Two. That's your Microsoft. You don't count either, right? Server core never really got deployed, and the reason it never got deployed was because there's no UI. The UI is a command prompt. If you remember all your net shells, and then you might be able to get something done. But because there's no UI, if a third-party product you needed to configure something. Let's say you need to configure your Broadcom NIC team. Okay, so you go and fire up the tool to do that, and it wants a UI, and it can't run, so you can't configure your NIC team. There was lots and lots and lots of features like that we kept finding. It's a great idea having this server core, until you need to do something to the physical box that needed a UI, and then you couldn't run them. And the problem was in 2008 and 2008 R2 was it was an install option. So when you installed the box, you chose, I want a full-blown Windows server or a server core. And if you changed your mind, you reinstalled it again. And that was what we did, okay? So that was a good idea, didn't quite catch on. Completely changed now, okay? Server core still exists. There's this concept of min shell or minimal shell. And it's a configuration option. You decide you want a UI, you decide you don't want a UI, you decide you want the management interfaces, you decide you don't, okay? So to make this make more sense, I have a little demo, which means I have to put my glasses on. If you remember me, I used to be able to see properly, now I can't. One sec. I've a little demo just to wet your whistle, okay, on what this looks like. I'll make that go full screen and I'll show you this. So if you've not seen server core before, that's the server core interface, okay? Pretty hard to work with, okay? But with the minimal shell interface, thing turned on, you've got PowerShell. So now I can do anything because it's PowerShell, okay? Just to show you this, if you get Windows features, anything to do with GUI, these two things are going to pop up now are the features you can add and remove. So you can turn on the shell or off the shell, and you can turn on the management the interfaces. So they're just options. And there is a reboot required, unfortunately, but that's the idea, okay? But with the management pieces turned on, I can run things like Computer Manager, I can run things like Device Manager, I can run anything, okay? But it's server core. Make sense? So server core has become nice. It's become, it's the default. The minimal shell option is the default. It just makes, it's just, you know, we hope that's going to be the installation option of, everyone's going to do that from now on, okay? Make sense? We like server core. I said NIC teaming has been available on Windows, but it was never done by us. It's done by us now, okay? So it's in the box. 32 NICs in a team. If you want, they can all be from different network providers, which is interesting, right? So if you went down the Broadcom or the 3Com, whatever route you went down, like HP one, whatever you did, and their driver got corrupt, the whole team went down. Now you can mitigate the risk of that happening. Sorry, there's even an animation there of that happening. The rest of the team just stays up. Okay, so we want you almost to go and build teams from different providers. So your teams stay up, and more dots and ones go screaming down. Just works. Okay, they all need to be the same speed. So you can't mix and match 10s, 100s, 1 gig, 10 gig, InfiniBand. You can't mix them all together. But if you want to do, let's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And let's put 8 10 gig cards in. You've now got 80 gig of throughput coming out of that box. But 32 10 gig cards in, you've now got, I'll give myself a number I can't do, 3.2 terabytes, does that sound about right? Of I.O. going in and out of box. Do 32 InfiniBand cards, I'm not going to attempt that sum, that's 32 times 56, is lots, okay? Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of I.O. and I'll keep that thought in your head because I'm sure Aidan will mention it when he talks to storage. But the point is it's just in the box, just works, okay? A little demo to show you how easy it is to do, because it's easy. Everything's remotable, so on a remote server called Server 2, I'm going to configure Nick teaming. So I don't even need to be on the box to do it, okay? Goes off and interrogates what cards I've got available to me, going to create a new team. One of them I can see is already in use, it's doing something. So I pick the cards. I can pick one of those cards to be a hot standby if I want to. If I want a hot standby mode, I can do that. And it will go off and create it. Depending on what switches you've connected to, I can do clever things with switches, okay? I'm just doing this in a virtual machine, so I haven't got much options, and someone might or might not talk to that later on today. But just literally next, finish, and I've created a team, okay? It's just going off and configuring it all correctly. On that server now, I've got one network card, well, called team in that instance, and those 3 cards are in it. And only one of them can die, and my bandwidth is still going to get used, and it's just going to fail over. Just works, okay? Hopefully that makes the ease of use stuff. So I configure a live migration to another host, and all I need is a credential and a 1 gig network to it, and I'm done, okay? So it starts the live migration off, so it creates a configuration stub, if you like, on the other guy, and starts a shared nothing storage, so a storage migration. When the storage migration starts, basically I just start replicating all the content of that VHD file onto another guy, okay? Makes sense? That's easy. Once they're in sync, once they're more or less the same, I start doing all my read and writes, or my writes to both. I'm reading from the source, I'm writing to both, okay? And now I start my live migration, my vMotion. I start copying my memory pages across. Copied them all across. Whilst I did that, a few pages got dirty, and I go back and copy the rest again. When this memory is the same as that one, or I've done it 10 times, I'm getting bored, I just stop that guy and start that guy. If it all worked, I delete the source. If it didn't work, I fail back again. So we don't throw all our, what's the word I'm saying? We don't throw that away until we're really happy that worked, okay? So we've done a live migration and a storage migration, and we did them both at the same time, and the only requirement was a credential, so Kerberos or whatever, and the 1 gigabit network, and that was it. It just worked. And it introduced planned failover to people who didn't need clusters. There was a question up there.
The source and the destination need to be 2012.
Both need to be 2012, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Separate licenses.
Well, as long as this server has got his license for all the Windows servers that it's currently running, and this server is currently licensed for all the servers that it's currently running, then you're done, right? So I'll quickly do that because it's a good point. I've only got 64 nodes in the cluster. I've only got 2 hands. 2 servers. I'll turn these round. 2 virtual machines running there and 2 virtual machines running there. Okay, completely covered, standard, okay? Makes sense? 1 standard license, 1 standard license. In the event of a failover, a failure, that server's now dead. This guy fails over, is now running 4. This guy now needs to be licensed for 4, so he should have had 2 standards. And it could have gone that way around, and they said, well, that guy should have had 2 standards. But I'm only running 4 VMs, so do bigger numbers, 4 and 4, okay? 2 standards, fails, I'm now running 8. Should I put 4 standards over there or 1 data center? 1 data center makes sense. And because it could have gone that way, 1 data center could have made sense, which is where data center starts making sense, okay? Okay, makes sense? That's enough of licensing. Don't like licensing. Okay, live migration, shared nothing live migration. I'll quickly show you a shared nothing live migration. And all this going to get covered in much more detail throughout the next day and a half, okay? But I'll just quickly show you this because this one's almost a funny one because I picked an OS that was just entertaining. So I have a bunch of non-clustered hosts. And imagine this is my mission critical app, okay? My mission critical app is a DOS box running Duke Nukem, okay? but it demonstrates the functionality, and it's relatively quick, okay? So there you go. Mission critical app, that can afford to never go down. But for planned downtime, okay, I want to move it. I want to move it off that host. I need to do some work on that host. I'll go in and say move. I say next. I'm moving the virtual machine. There's my option just to do storage on its own, but I'm going to move the virtual machine. Where am I moving it to? Pick a host, pick a destination where I've got a credential, and a 1 gig network is my minimum requirement. Am I moving everything, or we're going to break it up? I can move bits of the data everywhere. I can move one VHD there, one there, do whatever I like. But I'm going to move the whole shooting match and the execution of the VM to wherever I said server 2. And on that server, where am I going to put the VHD file? I'm going to plonk it there. finish. So it really is next, finish. It's the benefits of a Windows admin. It's easy, okay? So it's doing the storage migration, and when it's finished doing that, it does or more or less finished doing that, it does the live migration piece. It just works. And if you do, the reason I use DOS is because DOS has got a pretty small footprint. If you do a server over a gig network with 10, 20, 30 gigs of storage to move, that can take a while. So that's a small little DOS box with not much memory in it, and done. Okay, and that's how easy it is, and that's what I wanted to show you. And it's still running. It's the app never went down. The users are still happily playing away. Using the line of business application that you put that workload, that requirement in for. Okay, and it just works, and it's nice. Okay, CPU throttling. This is a IIS specific thing. Okay, but so it's IIS, Internet Information Server, and the scenario would be this guy goes pear-shaped, or this app goes pear-shaped, and clobbers the CPU, which basically means that no one else can get in and do anything. Okay, so one badly written app can kill lots of apps. So in the IIS world, you've potentially got hundreds or in hosting, thousands of tenants, thousands of apps running, thousands of users hitting that box, and one badly written bit of code can take the whole server down. So what we do in Server 2012 is we just enable a feature called CPU throttling, which basically just allocates, you can't use more than. Simple as that, okay? So again, in the vein of noddy little demos to show you features, I'll just quickly show you this. Keep an eye on the time. So I've a little app there called Busy, and Busy is just going to flatten that server, and it's going to flatten IIS to 100%, okay? So it's going to, let me see what I was doing. So I'm just clobbering the box, 100% maximum CPU, one thread of execution, one app. It happens to be the default application pool. It's just getting clobbered, okay? So that's just to demonstrate how it dies, and the process that's dying is IIS. So IIS is taking more or less the whole box, and the rest of the box is just struggling to stay alive. So that's the problem. And to show you the solution, you go into, get with the other mouse so you can see the bits at the bottom. Again, all remotable, everything's remotable. Go in, remotely fire up IIS against that box. And if you go into the application pool itself, there's an advanced setting over here somewhere. There it is there, and it's, again, simple to do, but you go in and you say limit. Now it's in thousandths of a percentage, and the reason everyone thinks it's a bit fine-grained, it's because in a hosting environment you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of sites, so you want thousands. So I've set a thing there that says 15%, and I'm going to throttle it. So I do exactly the same thing. I'm killing the box, trying to kill the box, but IIS has been throttled to 15. Oh, okay, 19. It's not too bad. 18. It's getting there. But you get the idea. So one badly written app isn't killing the server now. The other tenants on that box are happily living away merrily, and they didn't all die. So you get this, right? That's simple and noddy, but it's one bell or one whistle or one feature that might be the reason that you upgrade to 2012. And that's what we're trying to do, is going to give you a reason to upgrade. And then when we get past me, we're talking to how you implement all this stuff, okay? Storage spaces. We've put lots of investment into storage, Storage, as you probably know, more than doubles every period of time. There's more data on the planet now than there was yesterday. There's probably twice as much, and there's more data on my laptop probably than there was in the whole world. Go back 20 or 30, 40, 50, 60 years. It's not funny. The data explosion is just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Okay, and to do storage properly, and you need to keep your data for God knows how long now. To do it properly, you had to past tense. Had to go and buy storage stuff. You had to go and buy SANs and do clever stuff, and to get all of the enterprise features of replication and dedupe and all this clever stuff. You had to go do it, which was expensive, which makes doing Windows servers expensive. So what we've done is we've come up with this concept of storage spaces. Storage spaces doesn't really care about the underlying storage, and Aidan will correct me when he talks to storage, but we don't really care. You get a bunch of disks, and you logically pool them. So I've just created a couple of pools there, okay? I can now start working with those pools. And they're full of different sizes, different buses, just different. It's a bunch of different disks, okay? All different sizes. I haven't had to have gone off and bought a storage enclosure full of X size disks that when I need to add more disks to it, I can't buy anymore because I can't buy that size. They've all gone bigger now. It's irrelevant. Just a bunch of disks. Okay. And then what I do is on top of that, I create storage pools, storage pool spaces, which lets you introduce the concept of some sort of mirroring or striping of data across. Lets me turn on this concept of a hot standby of a disk. So it's managing physical disks, but now I've brought it up to a virtual level. And on top of that, I start creating virtual disks, which I can thin provision or thick provision, and I can trim and all the clever enterprise features. And I present all that disk up to everything else that I've ever wanted to use storage. Okay, so everything in Windows gets storage spaces. I haven't turned on a feature just and disabled something else. Everything that runs on Windows understands storage spaces, and then I use that for anything. Okay, so anyone out on the network can access these resources, and off I go. And this was just me. If you miss this piece here, if I run out of disk because I thin provisioned, I'm going to get an alert up saying, Dave, you're getting very close to the physical limit. You better put some more disks into that pool. I just lash them in and it sucks more in. Okay, and now I'm okay again. So I can complete. We've done silly demos where I've got a laptop and I've allocated multiple terabytes of disk, and it thinks it's got multiple terabytes of disk. Just works. Okay. I do this at home. I've two terabyte drives. One's plugged in all the time. I've configured a RAID, so I plug them both in. It synchronises. It's got all my stuff I want to keep, my memories in, and I take one out occasionally and put it somewhere else. And then when I remember, I go plug the other one back in. It synchronises it back again. Unplug it, and I've got my off-site. So this is in Windows 8 as well. Storage spaces is in Windows 8 as well as server. Just works. Okay. What I can do I can start using that somewhere else. Okay. So this is application support using SMB 3.0. Now, I'm not going to do too much on this, but SMB is our server message block protocol, been around since Landman of the 1980s, I suppose. Landman was. I've been around for a while. Okay. It's grown up lots. It used to be 2.1. Now we're 3. It's gone up lots. Okay. It lets me do some very clever stuff. I'm not going to steal too much thunder. But I have this ability of just aggregating all my storage together and coming up with a single namespace that's either on one server or on 2 servers or on 3 servers on a cluster. Okay, so I can build a cluster where I've got this one namespace. So server, share, foo, share. Okay, and now I can let Hyper-V or SQL, so mission critical workloads, going over the network using server message block, access all this storage, and be supported. So no longer do I need to go buy fibre channel and weird and wonderful SANs. I can just build file shares. We can all do file shares. I can build a file share, and over my network, let mission critical workloads come and work against it. Now you might have 1 gig would work. What's an average server? It's got 4 1 gig cards in the back of it now. I've got 4 gig. Start putting 10 gig stuff in. If you've run out of bandwidth, put more servers in. That's your limitation. How many servers can you put in? Now, there is a limitation at the moment. We can only put 8 into one of these clusters. But 8 servers with multiple very fast NICs in gives you an awful lot of throughput. Okay, lots of throughput. I won't give your number away because it's a nice number. Okay. And underneath the hood, I don't care. I don't give a monkeys what we're using storage-wise. It can be all your RAID stuff. It can be your SANs, or it can be your storage spaces. It's nice. So maybe you've got a SAN. Maybe you've bought some SAN, but there's a limit to how many controllers you've got and how much I/O you can throw through that thing. Put a file server cluster in front of it, and now you can have hundreds or thousands of connections at this end, using your limited. Maybe you bought a SAN with 8 connections, using your 8 connections. And you can really get some nice throughput in this thing, okay? And I'll hold that thought in your head, okay? Am I doing okay? Applications. We did say none of us were developers, so I can probably whiz through this, okay? But this talks to the symmetry of stuff. So Windows Server is just something you run applications on, okay? That's why we have servers, is to run applications on. And the point behind this is I don't really care whether it's in the cloud or on a service provider's site or on-premise. It's the same, okay? Develop it once, publish it in many times. But there's some features in it that are nice, okay? the hybrid application piece, you know, your data on premise because you're not allowed to put that in a public cloud, execution up in the cloud, maybe you've got some Hadoop or some weird stuff running up in a big cloud, maybe you outsource pieces of that to, I don't know, pick someone, BT, Black Knight, DigiWeb, someone like that, okay, and off you go. That CPU throttling lets me do multi-tenant, high-density websites. So thousands of sites running on a single box. Non-uniform memory addressing. We understand big boxes and will behave correctly on top of them. I won't do my little NUMA hands and fingers because it's entertaining. Centralized SSL stores. Has anyone done SSL on IIS before? A couple. So you'll realise I'm going to show you something now that makes your life much easier, and the few of you will realise the benefit.